Hey guys, this is Forsaken Reality here with the 46th episode of the multiplayer RPG tutorial series. In this one, we're going to be continuing our targeting system from where we left off last. So we'll get into that right now. The first thing we're going to want to do is open up our combat component. This is where we're going to be doing most of our work too. And first off, I'm just going to create a couple new functions for controlling the rotation of the player in the camera. So we're going to call the first one control the that makes a little more sense. Targeted control rotation. And this function, we're going to need a return node. Gonna make a little bit of room. And we're going to get our character reference and get controller. Okay, control rotation from the controller. We also want the camera manager, which will get the active camera. Get camera location. Looks like it's the location of the active camera. We want to get the fine look at rotation. And the way we're going to do this is we need to get the rotation of our camera, and the target's going to be our nearest NPC. So in order to get that, we're actually going to go back out to our event graph, create a custom event. Lock on to closest NPC. I'm going to move this event down a bit. So I'm going to create another custom event. Lock on. It's going to be our lock on event. It's going to use the lock on to our targets. And we're going to need to go through this a little bit before we continue setting up this so we can get a reference to our NPC, because we're using our lock on event to deal with that. So the first thing we're going to do is create a Boolean we'll name it NPC locked. Create a branch because we're going to want to check if we're already locked on to a target. And we are locked on to an NPC. And we will run through our code. And if not, we will create another variable. Closest NPC distance, and it's going to be a float. This is going to be used to set the closest distance you can be to an NPC when it's locking on, the lock on radius basically. And this will be, you'd want this distance to be the same as your character lock on sphere radius. I'll basically get the maximum distance for the target to be used. It's a variable so that our AI can have access to that variable too. And we're going to get all actors class. Get our master NPC. And we're going to get a for each loop to loop through all of our active AI. And we're going to create a branch. And we need to create another variable. Just gonna go to our AI, which is right here. Yeah, we have the variable created already. Just gonna drag out target, get targetable. And we're gonna loop through our AI, and if they are targetable, we are going to set a reference. We're going to promote this to a variable from this array element. That's going to be our targeted NPC reference. So if it is targetable, we'll set that. And then we want to compare the distance to the character to our closest NPC distance. So we're going to use the compare float to do this. And our input is going to be our distance to the character, which is from our AI. And our closest NPC is going to be set right here, which is set at 1,000. And if our distance to character is less than our closest NPC, we'll lock on to closest NPC. And we also want to run our, actually no, we'll be doing that. We'll be creating another custom event. And that's going to be set lock on to NPC. And this will be used to run through our lock-on event. And we'll run this right here when our loop is complete. I'm just going to comment this. So we'll loop through all the enemies around us within the proper distance, within the radius of our character's sphere. Check if the enemy is targetable. Set that reference targeted for the ones that are. And we're going to compare the distance to character to the closest NPC distance. Basically, this variable will be adjusted to set the closest, to determine which one is closest by using the distance to character to set the closest distance. And the way we're going to do that is lock on to closest NPC. We're going to get our I'm just going to make a little category right here for our targeting. Where targeted NPC reference. I'm going to promote this to a variable. This is going to be our nearest NPC reference. And we'll get our distance to character here. And set the closest NPC distance. So now we have our lock on to closest. I'm going to comment these. So the closest NPC gets set. Basically loop through and get the next closest AI. And we're going to also want to set our lock on to NPC. So we'll create a branch. Right here, we're going to check our closest NPC distance to the maximum distance, which is we're going to create now. And we'll put this in targeting. It's going to organize that a little bit. And we're just going to set this to 1,000 for our default. And then we're going to grab our closest and our maximum. We're going to check if our closest is less than our maximum. Basically checking if the NPC is within the maximum radius. And if it is, we are going to run our lock-on event. I'm just going to remove event from the name. And the target is going to be our nearest NPC ref, which we can also put up into this category. That's the one we want. No. I see where I went a little bit wrong here. I have my lock-on event, and I made a testing lock-on that was for displaying the icon overhead. I will be showing how to do that, but for this, actually, I'll just show you how to do that now. So you want to go into your master NPC. And I'm just going to use a static mesh. And this is going to be the lock on mesh that's displayed. We're going to scroll down, turn off, keep visibility on for now so I can see it. I'm going to put it up over the AI's head. And I believe that if we go into here, view, show engine content. There we go, we have a cone that we can use. You can bring in your own mesh if you wanted to. This one will work for now, just to show pointer at the AI. And I don't want one that's so big, so I'm just going to adjust the scale, 0.2, 0.2, 0.4. And I'll bring it down a little more. So now we have our mesh overhead. I'll create a material for that as well after. I'm going to create a custom event. That's going to be our display lock-on mesh. Create a boolean. And it's going to be lock-on mesh visible. And we're going to create a branch. And we're basically just going to check if it's visible, and this is going to be our toggle for displaying and rendering it invisible. So we'll grab our lock-on mesh, Set visibility. And it's false. Set it to new visibility blank and false, and if it's true, line things up properly here. I'm gonna set a new visibility. And copy this and paste it because we're going to want this twice. So we press it and it's false. We want to set it true. And then we'll set the visibility off. And then if it's true, we'll disable it and we'll set the visibility. And now we can go into our combat component. Set lock on to nearest target. And we can display our lock on mesh. It's true. So if the closest target is less than the minimum distance, we'll display our lock on mesh. And we were going to need another function, but we're going to want to finish this targeted control rotation. Now that we have more of that finished up, we can get our nearest NPC reference now. So we want to get our nearest NPC, get actor location. I'm going to split this. Type in make vector. I guess I don't need that. I used that for some other debugging when I was doing some other things. You just do this. We're gonna get an iron terp tube for a rotator. We're gonna want to control and click this. Drag it down to the target, because that's our target. And our current is our controller rotation. And for delta time, I'm just going to put 0.05 and 1 for our interp speed. Those are values that I found were nice for when rotating the camera. I'm going to get a brake rotator. And same thing here. Anyway, I'm going to make rotator. We're going to get the Y pitch and the Z pitch from here, and the X from here. And we're going to plug this into our return node. That's just going to be a rotator. And we also want a reference to our controller. So get our controller reference that way. give this a comment. Sets the camera rotation to face the nearest target. So now I have this function done. We need one more function. It's going to be our toggle lock on. Bring our targeted control rotation. Set control rotation. And the rotation is going to be the output of our targeted rotation. Just going to return. Now our function is complete. Head back to our event graph. And set lock on. We can now so I'll just display the lock on overhead mesh. We'll drag it up here. And we'll set timer by function name. Our function name will be toggle lock on. So I'll start this function and run it every 0.01. We're going to have it looping. And we're going to set our NPC locked to true. At this point, this is when we're locking onto our NPC. Okay. Comment this. Basically, this will be used to run through our lock-on event. Is basically the way it's working now is it's checking if our NPC is locked, and if it's not locked, it's setting references to the nearest NPCs. And when we call this, it will start the toggle, which will run through this, which will set the controller rotation from our targeted control rotation. So that will turn the camera towards the AI, and it will keep turning the camera every time this event runs. And we'll also set the NPC is locked onto. But our lock-on event isn't actually doing too much right now. So if we run this again, we're going to want to first set that our NPC is locked off. So basically, if it's true, this will be used to turn off the lock on. And master NPC, I did this a little differently. Get in line. nearest NPC reference. Display lock-on mesh. And this will run through our event and turn off our lock-on mesh. And we want to finally pause timer by function name. And the function name is going to be toggle lock-on. So we're going to disable that. I'll basically just turn off the targeting system, or stop you from targeting a new AI. Looking through and seeing what else we have to do here. So we're gonna need a few things out and lock on. So when we end our lock on, we're also going to get our targetable from our AI. And disable that. And we're going to want to check if our NPC is currently locked. Or if we have an NPC locked. And if we do, create another branch. Check if the nearest NPC is equal to the referenced NPC. I'm actually going to do it this way. So our reference is, so the NPC that's coming in through this when we run this event is our nearest. Gonna move this down some. So not all squished up like that. And our NPC is locked. Sorry, I have a random, so like an over a bit of sickness. Tried to pause it there, but I guess I missed that one. So our nearest NPC reference is equal to the NPC coming in. We want to run our lock on event. So basically this will run through our lock on event and we'll check if it's true or false. And if we are already locked on, it will disable everything. And if not, it will go through and start setting everything for our lock on collision to start locking it on. We'll get our nearest NPC basically. Basically, if our target leaves the lock on collision, this right here will disable it because you're ending the lock on. That also runs on the end collision. And we're also going to want to get our character reference, get our character movement, I'm going to set control desired rotation to false. we're going to set orient to movements true. I'll just set the camera back to normal. And now that should be everything for in here. Comment this. I already have it commented, it's just really small. Let's do a little bit of organization here. We have a lot of stuff here, so I'm thinking I might just realize there's two things in there. Okay, I'm just going to select everything to do with the targeting system here. Right click, collapse nodes. This is my targeting system. I'll just make things a little neater there for us. So we can just click into this and we'll have everything displayed in here for our targeting system. And finally, we're going to want to go over to our character and our input graph. And right under the melee combat, I'll put it. I'll just create a, go to project settings, input, create an action mapping. Let's see, target NPC. And I'll have a toggle lock on actually. And so the middle mouse button, so the middle of your mouse. Toggle lock on input. Get our combat component. And we're just going to connect this right here to pressed. So that runs through our lock-on event and does all of our code that we need for our lock-on. We'll create a branch. We're going to check if our NPC is locked. And if it's true, we'll get our character movement. rotation. Set that. Run this through a true event. And we're also going to set our orient rotation. I'm going to take this right here to true. Leave that a false. Press Control C and Control V this here to paste it. And I'm going to flip these so this is true and that is false. Just going to look at my character movement. Make sure everything is set up properly there. Looks to be. I'll save. So basically toggle between being able to spin your camera around your character and your camera always being behind your character, which is what you'd want when you're locked on to an AI. And I believe that's everything. We also want to go to our lock on mesh, make that turn off visibility. And now when we test in game, we have our lock on. It's locking on, but it's toggling things the wrong way. So you want to go to your AI. And I believe that we put the checks in the wrong area there. And there we go. That is our lock-on system. There's still a few little tiny bugs like that you just seen where I locked on to the farthest one. Like right there. We will look into that in the next video. We will also set up a material. So that's not just, so it's more of like a transparent rotation like we seen in the showcase video first off. But that's going to be everything for this video. Just gonna, his collision messes up because he's not, I'm gonna have to look into that one too, because we never set him up properly for combat. Lock on and circle around him and fight him. And our camera will go around him. So that's going to be everything for this episode. If you found this video helpful, want to see more, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss out on any new tutorial uploads. If you have any questions, suggestions, or comments, feel free to leave those in the comment section below or join my community Discord server using the link in the description. Thanks, and I'll see you all in the next episode.